Hi friends and family, it's Deborah. This is my second video in my How to Crochet for Beginners series. In the first video, we talked about how to make a slip knot, the general idea of a rectangular crochet project, and we talked about how to chain. In this project, I'm going to talk about your turning chain. So this is how you start each new row of a project, how you create the height of that row. So general idea of your project, you're going to have a row of chains, and then each row is going to be your stitches. This one is double crochets. So let me show you my 4 projects here. Even though these are different sizes, 1, 2, 3, 4, even though they're different sizes, they have the same exact number of stitches. I have 11 stitches across and 5 stitches up, or 5 rows of stitches. So the difference is the stitch that I used. This one is single crochets. This one is half double crochets. This one is double crochets, and this one is treble crochets. So each stitch has a different height. So what that means is your turning chain, this part right here, this very first one, your turning chain needs to be a different height depending on which stitch you're using. If you're using a taller stitch, your turning chain needs to be taller. So let's look at what people usually go by in order to determine how many stitches per turning chain. Turning chain height, the length or number of chains of the turning chain depends on the next stitch in the row ahead. So if you're using a very tall stitch, this is the treble crochet, then your chain at the beginning of the row, your turning chain, will be taller than if you were doing single crochets. That's shorter, so it's going to have a shorter turning chain. This diagram has been so helpful. I've referenced it for years just to remind myself how tall my turning chain needs to be. So if you're using single crochet, you're going to use 1 chain in your turning chain. If you're doing half double, 2 chains. If you're doing double crochet, this is my most common stitch, you're going to use 3 chains. If you're doing the treble, 4 chains. I don't usually use the double treble, but you would use 5 chains. And then the slip stitch, it has no height to it, and you usually only use the slip stitch if you're trying to connect your rectangular project to make a cylinder or something like that. Another thing to note is that when you're counting the number of stitches in a row, let me use one that's easier to see. Your first chain, your turning chain, usually counts as 1. So this would be your first chain or first stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So this has 11 stitches across in every single row. It helps to be able to count your stitches so then you know if you have the same length of your row every single time. So when you are creating, in this case, using treble, that means that my number of chains here in this first row, treble would have been 4. So here I would have chained 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I start all my treble stitches so that I have the same height. All right, see you guys in my next video. Bye-bye.